I think it's accessible. It's also good for people starting out because I think like a lot of people I met on set ended up giving me post work later on. And it's hard not to network on a film crew. You know, you end up naturally meeting people and collaborating. So I think that's always a good strategy starting out. And so you're now a union sound editor, sound designer with the IATSE, which, if students aren't aware, that is the primary film union and stagehand union and represents all sorts of different professionals in audio and film and media. It's the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Motion Picture Technicians, Artists, and Allied Crafts of the United States, its territories, and Canada. It's a mouthful.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So that's the IATSE, and you've been a member for several years now. It's like 2019, and before that, you were working on indie projects and things where, you know, I think students have a hard time understanding like there's a union world and there's a non-union world, and there's a lot of different work out there. But you know, most people have to cut their teeth on the lower budget non-union stuff first, just to get experience, to get credits and things. What was your experience like if you had to compare and contrast the two worlds, just working wise? Like, what do you think the biggest difference is in working non-union versus union, other than money, maybe?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, the on paper, like the benefits you just mentioned, money. I mean, union work is there are certain guarantees of how much you're going to get paid. Which is nice to have that sort of job security and pay security. Also, you just have, like, I work in TV mostly, and when you get on a show, that is a lot of work you've just secured for a single season. I mean, the first show I got was, I want to say it was either 8 or 10 episodes, and I was given 7 days per episode, so that's 60, 70 days right there of work, whereas in freelance post-sound world, you're lucky if you get 3 days in a row. That's like, I feel stoked if I got 3 days of work per week in the post-sound freelance world. Whereas working in union world, I find that it's just a lot more consistent, the work that you get. But beyond that, with the non-union world, the quality of the project will range, and you can work on amazing non-union work. I mean, a lot of, I think if not all commercial work, like trailers and stuff, that's all non-union, and they pay very well. So it's not like union equals good pay, non-union is bad. I just think in the realm that I worked in, which was a lot of non-commercial, that was the case. I did find some people who were doing some pretty cool branded content for online that was non-union. They got big clients, so they would pay decently, but again, it'd be like a single day of work.
Right.
So it's like not the same sort of longer, sort of more secure line of work. But then in general, the quality of the work also improved, meaning like, you know, on those short films or independent feature films, which is a lot of what I was working on. And even I worked in reality TV for 4 years, and we could talk about that.
Which is all non-union, pretty much. Like all reality TV is pretty much non-union.
Yeah, the one I worked on was all non-union, even though it's ironically, it's going to broadcast. Like it's going on Discovery Channel and all that, like Shark Week, Dynasty, ever heard of those? I claim to fame. Anyways, all that stuff just wildly varies in subject matter and like going away from that reality TV stuff, but more into the realm of like short films, indie features. You know, they're mostly dialogue heavy, which is it's really difficult to do dialogue. So I really became a great dialogue editor doing all that, but I didn't really improve my chops as a sound designer. Like, of course, there was plenty of hard effects like doors and cars, but you know, if they're making a low-budget short or feature film, they can't afford like a big car chase or an explosion or whatever, all the fun, juicy stuff that you can do in sound design. So I noticed when I went to the union world, like the first show I worked on was all about like this kind of like people who were like really into music, and so like they'd like kind of get into an emotional state and like burst out into essentially a musical, but it was more of a jukebox musical where they just like sing to a needle drop of a song. But then the world was super fantastic, and I was doing all this huge big sound design, and I was noticing that my sounds like were more impactful against like really, I don't know, like higher production value images, for lack of a better way of describing it. I'm a story first person. I don't care about that, but it is exciting as someone toiling away on low budget shorts, which I still, again, love. It's just hard to like get like super amped on like cleaning out lavalier noise. Like day in,
Right.
day out. So I think like when you kind of get more, it's like Ben Burt was handed this like, script initially told, can you make a Chewbacca? That was it. And then he saw the script and was like, because it was just like panoply of like opportunity of sound design. And he, took off every bit of meat off that bone, as we all know. And so like anyways, that was like a huge difference to me. And I find that I've pushed myself as a sound designer on these union projects just because there's more to do,
Right.
and it pushes
more sound design, less audio post-production per se, like the post-production of just cleanup and making it sound acceptable to most people's ears, and now it's more creative sound effects. I mean, your current role, you're more of you don't do as much with dialogue now, right? You're mainly a sound effects guy.
Yeah, and that's another delineation I should make, is that when you go into the union world on the shows that I've been on, there is a dedicated dialogue editor. I don't touch dialogue, nor do I touch Foley. We have Foley teams who do all that, which was hard for me to unlearn that because I was used to cutting Foley.
Doing it all.
Doing it all. So I had to like learn, oh, right, they're going to cover all the paper stuff. I thought I had to cut paper. So like, it's nice because then you as a sound designer and sound editor get to focus on just the sound effects, which I just felt like it was like the best change in my career, because I was like, I get to do this all day, like this is fun. And it's not a utopia. There's still days where I'm like, oh man, I gotta cut another dialogue, or like a driving scene with all this dialogue, but it's not kind of exciting. I don't know. There's still non-romantic days about it, but it certainly was a lot more practice in the realm of sound.
Right. 'Cause on the lower budget things, you have to wear more hats. You kind of have to do it all. And then in the union world, you've got that high degree of specialization. You've got the dedicated Foley artists, dedicated sound effects editors like yourself. So your main responsibilities are, I mean, do you cut a lot of backgrounds, or are you cutting mainly hard effects at this point, or do you do both?
I am. It depends on the show, because some shows I'll get on, there'll be another sound editor. So like we'll usually split it so one person's doing backgrounds and the other's doing hard effects, or even like a mixture, like, oh, you do backgrounds and some basic hard effects, and then the other person will do all the sound design and some other higher tiered hard effects. Whereas like a lot of shows I've worked on, I just do the backgrounds and the hard effects and sound design. And to be honest, I love working that way, and I love collaborating, don't get me wrong, but like I'm looking down just for those on camera. I've got 2 dogs in the room, so if you see me go, I'm not seeing ghosts, I promise. But yeah, I love knowing all the ingredients in the cake. So if I'm like cutting the backgrounds and the hard effects, it's like enabling me to work around one another. But obviously, if you collaborate, you could pull in somebody's backgrounds, listen to it, be like, oh, let me adjust my stuff so they mesh better.
And so students understand also, you're not mixing the work either. You're an editor primarily at this point, where you're syncing the stuff to visual. You're selecting source from your sound library, or recording custom work as needed, depending on budget and time and all of that. And then ultimately that gets handed off to the recording mixers, who's a separate person or more than one person to ultimately put all the pieces together. So like even on the indie side of things, you tend to, again, have to wear all those hats, where you might even be mixing the project if it's short form. So you've had to do more of that at the early stage of your career, where now you can really just focus on the editorial side, right?
Yeah, which I would advise everyone do a lot of everything, because that way you can understand how your effects will be mixed. So like, yes, that's totally true. I don't mix on any of the projects in the union world, but I have been told by many mixers, like I kind of provide effects that are kind of pre-mixed, and like I'll do things like clip EQ, or if the mixer allows me, I'll do volume automation on stuff. Because if you have like a car driving in from 700 feet away, like sure, I can burn that into the clip, but I'd rather just automate that. But yeah, so it's nice to know both worlds, but it's also nice to say, hey, I know I did a great job with this gunfight, but you deal with this. And you're the mixer with better ears and a better room, a more well-calibrated room. Can you please make my sloppy sound edit sound nice and beautiful?
Nice. So you're mainly working under, like, you report to a supervisor, supervising sound editor primarily, right? So they're the one who's kind of directing the aesthetic of the whole sound design and all of that. They're the manager of that. So when you're hired on a show, are you getting contacted by the sound supervisor directly? Or are you getting hired by like the post supervisor? Like who actually hires you for a show?
Yeah, it'd be the post sound supervisor who gets the credit. I think it's supervising sound editor on a lot of shows. Truth be told, like I've worked with plenty who they don't edit a single sound. They might correct some sounds, but they are in charge of the sound editorial and the mix, and therefore they get that credit even though like I'm the one cutting 99.9% of the sound effects. So I had in my head, because you do see like, Gary Wrightstrom or whoever else, like they get that title and they're cutting those effects. So it depends. But yeah, so I'm interfacing with a sound supervisor, and early on in my career, one of my first supervisors, he loved me coming into the spot session, so I would interface with the showrunners themselves. So on the spot sessions of each episode, like I did a show about the Wu-Tang Clan, and that was a really fun spot session because RZA, the band leader of that band, was one of the showrunners. So like I'm there with him and Alex Say, the other showrunner, and I could throw out ideas in the spot session so that on the mix stage it's not a big surprise like some weird direction I went with it. Like we discussed it in person beforehand before I kind of make a decision there. So it all depends. But a lot of the shows these days, the sound supervisors I work with will go to those spots and then report back to me and give me a bunch of notes and say, hey, like, here's the idea for this episode.
That's cool. If you don't mind, I think we had a student question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Could you hear them, Mike?
It was very quiet. Can you repeat that for me?
I could barely hear you as well.
Let me just make sure all is dandy here. Come back to me in just a moment.
Come back? Okay.
Yeah.
No All right, we'll come back to it. Okay. So, you've got the sound supervisor, you got sound editors, you got Foley, you got re-recording mixers. I think a lot of students get their minds blown by just how many different people there are working on this in tandem. When you get approached to do a gig, your union now, so the union is drawing up the contracts. Like you don't have to necessarily drop your own deal memos. Is that correct? Or you just have to sign a deal memo that you get from?
Look, I ain't no Ben Burt. I can't negotiate my own money these days. I have friends, colleagues my age who do, because they can. Right. They've got bigger titles. I've worked on a lot of, I'd call them mid-tier, like works of the people. You know what I'm saying? So like I just pretty much accept the rates set because they're good rates. Their union has like set rates for shows. But I think the part where I do have a little bit of a say is like my supervisor will say, hey, Mike, we got this show, and each episode we have budgeted X amount of days for you. And like, in my own head, like I've had projects where they go, hey, we've got like 4 days budgeted per episode and it's an hour long. And I go like, oh, that's sounds really tight. I'm used to like 5 or 6 days on a show like that. So I'll like have that kind of negotiating power to be like, I'm not used to that. Like, can we discuss this further? Or like, will there be room if there's like a much busier episode to add a day or two just for those episodes? So I do have some conversation there. And now that I've been doing this for 6 odd years, I know I'm pretty good. Like I still have imposter syndrome. So I'm quite used to going like, yes, thank you for the opportunity and just being super grateful. But now I've come to learn like, oh, right, my skills are very valuable and like I don't tend to get a ton of notes. So I know my work works on its own and makes showrunners happy. So it's like, wait, maybe I should speak up. So so I do make my voice heard if I feel like a show does need more days. And I've seen that actually take place. It doesn't always work, but I'll on the second season of a show be like, that first season could have loved another day per episode. It was a little busy with all those car scenes and explosions and gunfights, and they're like, okay, yeah, we got another day for you. So there's a little bit of haggling room for me there.
That's cool. We're gonna try again on the question.
Sure. How do I sound now?
Okay, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Mike can hear you. Okay.
So we just had someone reach out interested in how you market yourself. Other contacts that you may have, and other important areas of negotiation.
Great question. So in terms of like contacts, like Eric kind of hinted at the beginning, like when I started off, I was mostly doing production sound. So you're just organically meeting a bunch of people on set. And I learned pretty quickly on, like, if you just like show up with business cards and you're like kind of pushy about it, like, hey, like, just so you know, I do post sound, like, it's not too fruitful. I noticed sometimes you would see people just literally lay their calling card out on a table, like near Crafty or something. And I'm like, that's a little more passive. I'm not a very pushy, networky person myself, for better or for worse. With that said, now might be a good time for this story. Like, I'll just say, in general, in sound, it's great to be curious. Like keep your curiosity up, because like that for me has actually turned into concrete results in my own like career. Like, I just in general like share with people my passion for sound, and whether that be through my Instagram, which is mostly personal, friends and family, and sure I let in like other sound people in there. People just know I like sound, and so when it comes to like talking to people, like, you can't tell people, hey, I do sound, I also do a little bit of like finger painting, and I like to do dog walking, and like I also do like Trader Joe's runs. Like it's really good to identify yourself as like one thing. And you could just say I do post sound, but you could use a more romantic term like I'm a sound designer, and it just helps people remember what you do. And that's like a really hard thing to remember sometimes. Like I remember early in my career, my business card said like independent filmmaker, like video editor, sound designer. Like I was like listing everything I could do, and it's like no one will call me because they're just going to call someone who does that one role. So I would just say like pick a role, tell people that's what you do. And then on top of that, with the like, I brought up the curiosity thing because I one time on the field recording Slack, which I heard you mention the other day on another one of these. So I don't know how familiar your students are, but this is big sound community online. I asked a channel that was Los Angeles focused where I live. I just asked, does anybody have a whirly tube that I could borrow? I want to record one. It's like a little musical instrument. It's like, woo, really like obscure thing. I wasn't thinking, wow, I'm really gonna like meet some people this way. But what ended up happening is this person, I don't mind calling him out, Mitchell Lesner, happened to have one of these things, and I borrowed it from him like two and a half years ago, and now we're like really tight friends. He honestly, I want to owe him like the credit for me working on like the last 2 years of projects, and that's not an over exaggeration. I know that kind of sounds wild, but it's the industry has had its ups and downs, and Mitch has kind of, his phone keeps ringing off the hook, and so he'd hit me up and be like, hey Mike, I can't do this other show, are you available? And honestly, I could track like each of my shows from the last 2 years to this one individual, Mitch. So thank you, Mitch, if you're watching this. But it's only because I asked for a whirly tube, like a $10 piece of plastic. And if I hadn't done that, I honestly may have not had a lot of work these past couple of years. So like, I just say like, follow your curiosity. Like even when you're like, I don't know if this is going to benefit me. I think just meeting people in general is always good. And it doesn't need to be in a very pushy manner. Like, hey, by the way, if you need a sound editor or sound designer, I just think like, work on your own skills. That will organically come up. And then people will just want, if they jive with you, they'll give you a call or an email or whatever. Because that's what I've found. People will call me or email me and say, hey, Mike, we'd like you to work on this thing. And I'm like, do you want to hear a reel of mine? Like, I know you haven't heard my work. And they're like, nah, you seem cool. And I'm just like, wait, what? Like early in my career, I was toiling away at these reels, which you should still do. But I was so perplexed by that. But I think people want someone who's going to show up and do a fine to excellent job. They don't want someone who's not going to show up. So like, I think, and then someone who's pleasant to work with, and like, you know, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm affable. I won't bite. So I don't know. So that was, they asked about connection, like how do you meet people? So I just say like, yeah, like working on projects, and it doesn't have to be, I've mentioned production sound, obviously that could be post sound, and make an effort with post sound. It's so easy to just be siloed off. Like I won't meet most of my teams in person till I'm done with the show. And this is like even in the indie world of non-union. So like make an effort to go to the premieres, go even ask them like, hey, is there going to be a rap party, whatever, like if you're not invited. I mean, maybe that's weird to invite yourself, but like if they offer it, like definitely take up any and all in-person activities, because you never know, like you might connect on something else that's not sound. And then you just, like this guy Mitch and I, like we're both drummers, we both have imposter syndrome, or I'll speak for myself, I have it. And Mitch understood that, and I feel like we just really hit it off, and then naturally just became friends who happen to want to give work to one another.
Right.
So, and it's gone both ways. I've offered him jobs whenever I can, but yeah, so.
Cool. I mean, that's one thing that students understand. On the film side, it is very who you know and networking based, because it is mainly a freelance industry. And you mentioned, being siloed off. I mean, you do most of your work where you are now, right? I mean, you work mainly from your own home studio.
Correct.
And even though you're a member of IATSE, it is mainly a freelance union. I mean, most of the people, members are freelancers, not necessarily staff at a facility. You're not mainly going to a facility to cut. You are doing your work in your own space. When you receive work from a supervisor, you're getting like what kind of deliverables? Like, are you getting from a Pro Tool session that's spotted? Or are you getting an OMF or an AAF? Like, what kind of stuff do you usually get ingest-wise when you're starting a project?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have really good assistant sound editors specifically, who like prep all this stuff. So I've even sometimes gotten a straight up Pro Tools session with like the kind of like already opened elements. But a lot of the time what I do get, is like an AAF or an OMF from the picture editorial team, and as well as a picture. These are all very well labeled, because like what can happen is like they'll need to be a conform. So it's all like very specifically labeled, like, version 12, like today's date, whatever. So you get all that, and then so I pull that into a template. And I believe most of those times that deliverable has been assessed and checked out by an assistant sound editor. So if there was any issues with it, it's taken care of before I even touch it, which is a luxury. Like, I mean, in freelance sound world, which I still work in, or non-union, I should say, in non-union sound world, I mean, like every picture editorial team you work with is probably different, and sometimes you open it up and it's corrupt, or it just won't open, and you
hopefully they know how to make an OMF or an A.
Yeah, which I will recommend. You make a kind of an export sheet, which maybe you supply that with the students, but essentially like here are the settings to successfully get this to open in Pro Tools, and that figures out a lot of the kinks. Or like, here's where you put a 2-pop, which like in this day and age, I don't think most new picture editors have any clue like why a 2-pop was invented, which is totally fair. But it can be really annoying if like one picture editor gives you a 2-pop at the zeros, and then another at the 2-second mark, and another at 58. So you're just kind of like, okay, so like having standards is good. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. So and just so they also understand, as a freelancer, you're having to set up your own rig, your own software. You have to manage your own installs and troubleshooting and all of that. As opposed to being working as a sound designer who's maybe an employee of like a game studio or something, where maybe the facility is providing all of that. So you're working mainly from home. You got to manage all your own installs and everything. You're working with your own Pro Tools license. You got to have a way to manage your own sound effects library, which you have to provide as well. You record a lot of your own stuff. You buy your own sound libraries as needed, and you're using like SoundMiner, I believe, to manage all of that. How was that process for you, just getting the materials to start freelancing? Because I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people starting out. Just getting we kind of had a separate town hall on that with Andrew Scott, but within your specific case, like how did you find that experience of just building up that library?
Yeah, I mean, they are the paints we work with, right? Like, whatever analogy you want to use, or like I liken it to, with me recording sounds, it's like I feel like I'm a farmer, like who's like collecting ingredients all year round for like some cake or some recipe I have no idea I'm gonna have to bake in maybe 10 years, right? Like sometimes you record a very obscure sound and you're like, this doesn't seem useful, but it's rare, so I might as well record it, and then you might need it later down the line. And if you didn't record it, then you might have to license it online and spend money. So penny saved is a penny earned, as they say. So, but yeah, I mean, a realistic answer is like, I know it's daunting to think like I have to record all these sounds, but just, just start recording. And I did I listened to the Andrew Scott Zoom where you talked about like, how important metadata is, which it is. But I will admit, like my own sound effects library in the early days, I mean, there's files that are called like flesh compress 01, and that's it. And I don't think there's keywords or anything. And to this day, I can still flesh compress.
It's like maybe someday I'll put metadata in it, but I know where it is.
Here it is. So like,
nice.
I could still find the sound. And I do think it's a great idea to implement UCS and all that. I also don't want people to like get decision paralysis and instead of recording like 10 sounds a month, we'll keep it at that, we'll keep it safe, that you only do one because you're like intimidated by all the metadata stuff. So I would encourage you, like if you're intimidated by the metadata stuff, obviously if you're keeping it internal to yourself, you're not hurting anybody, like just record as many sounds as you can. And then as you improve, you will find very quickly, oh, it helps to have really good metadata. So obviously you can get better at that. I just know like as a beginner, everything's so intimidating. There's so many aspects of it. Like I got to record with the proper gain and the proper microphone and the distance and all this metadata. Like it can feel overwhelming. So I just encourage people to just like allow yourself to be creative, like record sounds and just like be consistent with your recording, especially early on. You're going to have a bit more free time, maybe, I don't know, than you might later on, especially in the union world. Like once a show starts, I don't have a ton of time to record sounds. So I'm always thankful for what I had before. And then in terms of licensing other libraries, that's been fundamental to getting the work done that I need to get done. I mean, as I could afford it, I'm a big proponent of don't just buy sounds because they're on sale. They're not going to earn you money just sitting on a hard drive. But as I grew in my career, as I could, I would afford new libraries. And I honestly am hesitant to even name drop any because this is now some of this knowledge is 10 years old, so there might be an even better replacement. I could say companies like Pro Sound Effects and actually I bought 2 big libraries from them. And when I joined the union, I knew I had to step up my game. And I think I saw the first episode of the show I was on. I was like, oh no, I don't have a lot of these sounds. And of course, I think you covered this on the Andrew Scott meeting where it's you could go online and find the specific car or whatever, but that's going to take you forever if you have to do that for so many sounds. So it's just nice to have a big general set of sounds to choose from. And sure, you might cheat what kind of car it is, but it gets the point across. And then you might get, I need to get this specific animal vocal or car. And then you could get very specific libraries. But it's nice to have those general foundation libraries with just a lot of coverage. And therefore, you're scrambling less when you're on tighter turnarounds. So, for me, that big one was Odyssey Expanded. But again, that was I think a $2,400 purchase. It was an enormous investment, but I was investing in myself, so to speak. I knew I'm starting union. I actually literally know the pay I'm going to get and how many days I'm getting, and unless the supervisor is going to bail on me, I'll be fine. So I safely invested in that at the right time, and I can't tell you how valuable that's been just on a time, energy, effort, because as I like to say with lots of subjects, time is non-fungible. There's nothing that will replace our own time wasted on something. So it's so worth it when you can afford it. And but I know Andrew talked about a lot of free sound effects resources too. So I won't belabor that.
Yeah, but I'm just curious, you've built up your collection of sounds. You were talking about, finding the right source for different things. And, what's the process of feedback when you're working on a show with your supervisor? I'm assuming mainly you're getting the feedback back from them. How does that feedback process work? Are you just delivering the entire session to them? Are you doing incremental, quick time bounces for review? What's your process on getting feedback on the work that you're doing during the show?
Yeah, great question. In general, what will happen is I will just send over my whole episode over to the supervisor, and the supervisor will review it before it goes to the mix stage. And different supervisors work differently. I've worked with supervisors who will just give me a list of notes and ask for those corrections. So like, oh, that car can sound more beefy, or like that dog sounds too small. Replace these things, and I'll do those revisions. And you want to make sure you're kind of working that into your own schedule and budget. Like if you know you're going to have to do those revisions, instead of working all, say, 6 days you were assigned on an episode, maybe you work 5.5 days, so you've saved a half a day to do those revisions. And then other supervisors that I've worked with, they will do those corrections themselves because they're just kind of like, oh, I could do this really quick. Like, I'm not going to bother Mike. I'll let him focus on the next episode that he's currently working on. So every supervisor kind of works differently. In the case of the recent example I gave where the supervisor handles it, usually on those shows, I'm getting paid a little less. And I think that's why, because they're like, oh, I'll handle this. So therefore, there's less like revision time for me. So it's different flavors. And sometimes it'll come to the mix stage, right? Like the supervisors looked at it, they were cool with it. They took it to the mix stage. They mixed it all internally, meaning like no showrunners or big wigs around, and then they do the actual mix playback, and some executive producer or a showrunner might be like, oh, this is great, but like Mike used a donkey as opposed to a dog sound effect. That makes no sense at all. Can you replace that? And my supervisor at that point's probably got their hands tied with something else like ADR or other things. So they might hit me up at that point and say, hey, Mike, can you like quickly cut us an ad? And it'll literally, I'll send it over that day, and the stage, their recordist or the assistant, they'll pull that element in and like add it to the session right then and there, like during that mix that same day.
Nice.
So I'll sometimes fly in stuff like that, but luckily that doesn't happen too often.
Cool. I think we had another student question. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question here. Where does your main revenue come from, and how has that changed since you first started freelancing?
Did you hear that, Mike?
Oh, no, I got nothing at all.
Oh, I got nothing.
Check. You guys
Sorry.
hear me?
I think I could just.
Yeah. There we go. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I got you now.
Where does your main revenue come from, and how has that changed since you first started freelancing?
Great question. Main revenue is certainly the union work that I'm getting these days. I still do non-union work as a union sound editor and sound designer. We don't have to lock ourselves off to only union work. I believe as a SAG actor, a union of SAG, I believe they say you can't do non-union work. So it's nice that I have the freedom to do both. So it's not exclusively union work, but yeah, my main revenue in that case is like both union and non-union sound editing and sound design. And then in the case of non-union stuff, I'm probably doing everything, like the editorial, the mix, the dialogue edit probably. But yeah, I'd say a bulk of my income these days is union sound editorial work, whether it be like cutting backgrounds, hard effects, or design. And then I know the question wasn't answered, but like passively, I do earn a little bit of income every year on sound effects libraries that I've put together and I sell. They're not at all like a huge sum of money. I could even say that like I noticed in the last year that earnings dropped like a noticeable amount, and even the year before that a little bit. And I think that's like showing the kind of shifts in the industry, which I'm an optimist. I think things will kind of go back up. So I just thought that was interesting. So I don't want to like name numbers, but it's like it's enough to afford me and my wife like, you know, a nice vacation every year at least, you know. So it's like it's a nice little passive income, and I do encourage everybody to try that out. It could be a small library, but you know, especially something like hard to record. I think my first one was a quadcopter. Because I worked on a show, literally a 10-episode reality TV show about quadcopter operators, which who knew they could make a show about that, but of course they did. And so I was like, well, I don't have the money to buy the only one on the market, which was like a $200 quadcopter library. So I was like, I'll just find somebody I know and record theirs. And then I released that, and it actually was like a really successful library because I think there weren't that many out there. So I would say if you're gonna make a sound library, maybe make something that's a little less covered. If you like go on the sound effects websites, like A Sound Effect, I'd say is the one I would use, the biggest one, or I'd say very approachable, pretty big, and I go there when I want to buy sound effects. And if you go, man, you know what I want to do a library on? Car traffic, and then type in the keywords car traffic, and you'll probably find 200 libraries that are like city sounds, traffic, which doesn't mean you can't do it. If you have like an amazing idea, go for it. Like I just released an ambience library, so like that sounds boring, but I wanted to do it. So
They did a symphonic ambiences, I think it was. That's the one, right?
Yeah.
You have a novel approach to it, though, so that's cool. Good job.
Yeah, I guess it was novel. Yeah. But anyways, I won't make this a promotion.
That's fine. So,
Promotional segment. But yeah.
I think we had
mostly sound editorial is how I mostly earn my money through union and non-union work.
cool. I think we had another question.
We do. The question is asking, have you ever had a project where time crunch, sorry, the computer changed, my apologies. Have you ever had a project where you were time crunching your budget time to complete the project?
No, never. I'm always given like way more time than I need, and I actually take a couple spa days. No, I'm just kidding, and I'm not mocking the question. I'm sorry if it came off that way. No, unfortunately, I think it becomes a thing where you have to learn to become a very efficient sound editor. I, in my early career, started in like one of the biggest jobs, the more serious job I got when I got out of college was a position as a sound editor on union television. Reality television, very non-union, and the timelines, the deadlines were insanity. It was like one 24-minute episode of like, say, like Duck Dynasty or even a Shark Week thing. I would have one single day, a 10-hour shift to complete the sound editorial on the Foley edit. And this had to like pass an M&E inspection, meaning like you couldn't miss like an obvious footstep or a door close or paper shuffle. So I had to edit and add the Foley, organize the AAF that the picture editors send over, which meant I had to organize the dialogue. I did the music edit. And I had to edit the backgrounds and the hard effects, and that was it. The mixer did the dialogue edit and the sound design, and I did like everything else editorially in 24 minutes in 10-hour shift. I mean, let me tell you, the first day I worked on that job, I did not hit the deadline. Like I was up all night, and I probably delivered the worst edit you've ever seen. And it was, but by 4 years, I mean by the 2-year mark, I could do that in 8 hours, like because it was kind of on rails and it was mostly dialogue. But all that's to say is, like, I try to look at this as, like, try your best to, like, find a quality of life balance, which is so much easier said than done. And I don't want to say, like, I've been a saint about that. Like, but I also, like, never wanted to, like, I want to have a family. I have a wife. We're going to have a kid. I don't want to, like, spoil my quality of life for, like, chasing an award or like working on a huge project or making a lightsaber sound effect. Like I personally, just like the life I want to live does not mean I want to sacrifice my like day-to-day life. And it really came with like working in the union world. I feel like I found that I was able to finally stop working weekends, which was pretty normal for me. It was a normalized thing to work not just weekdays but weekends, because it's like I only got a day of work Monday through Friday, but I just got a 2-day gig over the weekend. So I'm going to take that and not go to a birthday party or whatever it may be. So it's like there are unfortunately some sacrifices you may have to make, and you could learn to like weave in and out of that, or just simply say no to a job if a life event is way more important. Even if money-wise it's hard to say no. I always try to prioritize life over that. But I have certainly lost the original question.
It's all good. I think you answered.
What was the? Yeah. Okay.
Were you ever experience crunch?
Yeah, I mean all the time, and like what? Okay, and a more pragmatic answer for you, like I'll just jump to the union world because we are focusing on that too. On my TV shows, the way it works is every episode of a TV show I work on won't be the exact same amount of work per episode. Like episode 1 is usually a big like, look at all the money we threw at this show. So the first episode usually takes me more time than I've been allotted. Like they might say, Mike, you've been budgeted 6 days of work to do each episode. I might spend 7 or 8 days on that first episode, But then I am hoping that by episode 4, or by episode 5, there'll be a chiller episode, an episode with just mostly talking, people being like, yeah, that car chase was crazy, you know, and they're not actually doing the crazy stuff. And I will make up for those kind of lost days on the front end. So I really do try to respect my time and therefore like keep the standards that the industry expects of us at a good bar. If I tell my supervisor, yeah, I can do the show for 5 days per episode, no problem, but I'm secretly spending 7, 8, 9 days per episode, that's sending a false signal to producers and my supervisor that, oh, Mike only needed 5 days on the show, when in reality I'm working an extra couple days. That's actually going to diminish our value as a sound community and give a false idea as to what we can do. So, but again, I've been guilty of that, especially when times are tough and I haven't had work for a month or something, and I get offered a gig and I'm like, well, this could use more time, but honestly, like I'm gonna kind of maybe eat a little bit of time and take this job. And I'm just being realistic with the realities of some shows these days. But luckily, like I just find that I try to zoom out on the project and say, okay, they've only given me X amount of time. Where can I like make that money count, like my time count, and make it sound great? And then maybe like be less precious with the backgrounds or something here and there to be fair to myself and not get as crunched on the timeline. But yeah, it can happen, and it's hard to predict. But yeah, I would just say be kind to yourself. Make sure you have good recharge time set aside for yourself. Don't burn yourself out for too long.
For sure. So, Mike, just to get on the union topic a little bit more. So, mostly what I've heard from people is, you know, you don't really need to join the union until you need to join the union. Which to students I think can sometimes be confusing. It's sort of like, you know, okay, you have this tier of union production, which is higher budgeted usually, and you've got various guilds, and you've got all these people to have to network with and interface with. You know, at what point did you decide, or were you faced with that situation of like, okay, I need to join the union in order to, or I've been offered a job on a union show, but I'm not in the union yet. What was that process like for you once you got to that point of like, okay, now I really need to join, or I'm not going to get this gig? You know, like what was that process
great
for you?
question. Yeah, great question. So there's this thing called the roster. And so before you work in the union, you have to get on that roster. And that's just saying you are what's called union eligible. I think what that's all to say is it's showing union like staff, like your supervisors to be, people who might hire you. It shows that you are a skilled worker and that you know your stuff. And in order to prove that you're the skilled worker, they have a set of guidelines that you must fulfill to get on this roster. And so when I joined in 2019, that was, and again, don't quote me on this because they may have updated it, but when I was joining, they asked, in the last 3 years, you must have completed 175 days of a certain type of sound work. And when I say a certain type of sound work, they have very specific guidelines on that. At the time, that was projects that had been to film festivals, projects that have been to broadcast, which my reality TV would have applied if I had joined the union in time, but I did not. All that stuff was like 3 years later than when I decided to join, so I kind of threw all that away. So don't do what I did. If you happen to work at a non-union company that is putting stuff on broadcast, all that would apply. But anyways, I gathered those days, so to speak, and there's, I'll just tell you right now, honestly, there might be ways to like maximize those days. Like if you worked 1 day and got paid $1,000, you might not tell them you only worked 1 day on a project. You might tell them you worked 5 days. And like, as long as, I think literally the bar was, you simply had to, each hour had to represent a minimum wage hour. So I'm not telling you to fudge numbers. I'm just saying all they're looking at is minimum wage, like hour to hour kind of ratios. And so that helped me, because it's honestly, for me, it was really hard to get applicable days to that. And ironically, I would work on like a $250,000 web commercial, right? It would be published on YouTube, and I got paid a decent wage. I say $250,000 the whole project. I got paid like a couple $100, but like even so, it was a big name client, all this stuff. And I tell the union, yeah, I got this day. And they're like, no, that doesn't count because it wasn't broadcast and it wasn't at a film festival. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, YouTube isn't a professional service. So I'm like, okay. So they have very specific, stringent standards of what those guidelines are. So once you meet them, boom, you're on that roster. And then I believe at that point, you kind of are locked in as like union eligible. And so that should be your goal, getting on that roster. Because once you're on there, you're like safely in. Whereas like that whole timeline of the last 3 years, like we're going to make sure you had those days, they will just keep moving as time goes along. And those old jobs you used to work, in my case, the reality TV stuff, all kind of fell off, so to speak. And I couldn't use any of them, ironically. Right. So get on that roster if you want to go union. And then when you get the opportunity, in my case, it was I had been working with a supervisor, Mark Camperell, and he was getting me all non-union work for many years. And he honestly was like, Mike, I actually want to bump you up. Like, you deserve to graduate in your career. So he kind of recommended me. He straight up recommended me to another sound supervisor named Tom DeGorder of this company, Atomic Sound, who did some small shows like Lost and Westworld and Leftovers. Like, yeah, tiny little shows. No, so he recommended me to this great sound supervisor. And at that point, when Mark, my first supervisor, said, Mike, I want to recommend you, make sure you get on the roster. Like, so I'm like ready to go. So I think I like just squeaked it out in time. Like by the time that guy, Tom DeGorder, was ready to bring me on as a sound editor, I had completed all my paperwork with, it's called contract services. And I know some of this might go in one ear out the other, but to get on that roster, you are communicating with contract services, which is, it's like they work.
Yeah, they manage the roster, industry experience roster, and then students can find that on the website if you just Google like contract services.
So essentially, it was like I got locked and loaded on that roster, and therefore Tom could hire me. Whereas if Tom said, "Hey, Mike, I want to hire you," and I was like, "Okay, let me get my paperwork together," it would have been too late. Like his show would have started in a couple of weeks. So it's like you want to be on that roster, and that tells anybody who wants to hire you, like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Like literally at that point, I think all you have to do is pay your dues.
Right. So before that, you don't have to pay. Like, don't join the union before you have a reason to join the union. Meaning, like, if you're joining the union without having an offer, then it's like you're paying for nothing. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And what those dues go towards eventually, once you are working and all that, is your health insurance, your pension, all this stuff. So if you're not working, you're not reaping the benefits of paying for the union. So. So yeah. And
just so students know, the benefit system there, it's designed to protect the freelancers and make sure they've got health care and a way to retire at some point and all those things that all workers want. But you do have to continue paying into the system, like you said, paying dues, and I believe you do have to work a certain number of hours per year to maintain those, but to be a member in good standing to still get all those benefits, right?
Yeah, and I know health insurance is the most exciting topic that all of you, when you joined Full Sail, were like, I can't wait to like get good health insurance. But honestly, both my wife and I have dealt with health stuff and had to go to the hospital for procedures. I am so grateful that I had really good health insurance because they offer really good plans. And I cannot tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars we have saved collectively having really good insurance. And I believe it's free for me to have my wife, so essentially one dependent, on my health plan. And if we have kids, it's $25 a head, like per month, to add them to the plan. So if you want to have a family, I cannot stress enough how great that benefit is. It's an enormous benefit.
Cool. So did we have another question? Okay. Did I hear that?
No other questions.
No other question. Okay.
A lot of people love this info.
Good. Cool. So how much time do we have left? 10 minutes? Time to wrap up? Okay, cool. So I think we're going to wrap things up, Mike. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom. That was great. I think that clears a little bit about the union world and lifts the veil a little bit. So that's good. Thanks so much.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you. Oh, please. Oh my gosh. I can't help myself. Nice. Anyways, no, it was so much fun. Thanks for having this. And I wish you all luck in what you do, and just stay curious.
Awesome. So that's going to wrap things up for us on today's audio production town hall. Be sure to check us out each and every month. We will be doing this on the fourth Monday of the month. So be sure to follow us and check out each month's installment. So thanks again.